morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Thanks for joining us today. Science defines human intelligence as the distinctly human ability to learn from experience, to adapt to new situations, to understand abstract concepts, and to use this knowledge to navigate the environment. Today, we'll explore what's known as the concept of collective intelligence, the output or what emerges from the collaborative efforts of many individuals working together. In business and in technology, the application of collective intelligence is particularly impactful for problem solving, as solutions developed by collectively intelligent teams are systematically and significantly better than solutions developed by an individual person. This even holds true when the compared individual is considered to be the smartest person in the room. Seemingly a simple concept and a powerful one. But how do we apply collective intelligence to our businesses, to the complex systems, processes, and organizational structures we operate in? Let's take a deeper dive into the application for cybersecurity and applying this concept to our evolving threat landscape. How can we address cyber threats and incident response through the lens of collective intelligence? I'm Avery Koep, a product manager technical for Amazon AWS. And with us today, we have Ruchira, cloud security specialist developer, Rutu, a security engineer in corporate AWS corporate security incident response team, Amisha, our resident cloud infrastructure architect, and Comfort, who is a security engineer from the global intelligence and risk team. Thanks, ladies. Each of you functioning in a different part of the organization bring a unique perspective to security on the evolving landscape. Ruchira, Rutu, Amisha, and Comfort, thank you for being with us. To kick off this discussion, Ruchira, can you tell us a little bit more about the concept of human intelligence versus collective intelligence?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Avery. So, human intelligence is the general mental ability for reasoning, problem solving, and learning, and being able to communicate what's been learned. And all of this information and communication has to be integrated in some way. And that's where collective intelligence comes to life, which is, like you said, a group of people sharing knowledge to solve an issue. And what forms collective intelligence is several factors. The first one is openness, where all participants would approach a project or a problem without thinking that, hey, this is only my idea. Peering is the next factor, where people are able to champion ideas and grow a project on their own without any kind of micromanagement. It's also about sharing intellectual property with others in a group. And finally, acting globally, which allows different organizations to work together and form a larger network.
Interesting, Ruchira. How do these concepts apply to cybersecurity?
Okay, so let me start by saying the notion of collective intelligence and cybersecurity is nothing new. And in general, it's nothing new either. It's all around us in the form of search engines that harness knowledge from billions of users across the world and produce intelligent answers to the questions that we seek. And most of these principles translate to cybersecurity as well, where organizations and people in an org would work together as a unified front against cyber attacks initiated by threat actors. And it's very important to note that the actors that I mentioned here to work together. They share techniques and they form an effective collective offense to infiltrate the organizations. And this is exactly why it's often said that security is not just one person's job. If you're using your business's data, you are responsible to protect it too. It does not matter if you're a part of the security team or not. So, in order to detect suspicious activity, it's imperative that businesses utilize collective intelligence across all of their processes, because collaborating via collective intelligence can more effectively spot malicious activities, and it also helps reduce the attack surface before any serious damage occurs. One example of collective intelligence in cybersecurity is implementation of collective intelligence as a well defined incident response strategy. And moving forward in the discussion, it will be clear how we can achieve this.
Well put. In order to understand how to develop a strong incident response strategy, one specifically that benefits from collective intelligence. Let's pull up some visual aids here, and we'll have Rutu, as you are an incident responder yourself, break it down for us and walk us through a use case to help explain this better.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Avery. So let's all understand what is the actual meaning of collective intelligence when an organization is actually under a live attack. So I'm going to walk you through an example scenario, and we are going to follow this story timeline throughout our panel discussion. So I'm going to introduce a use case scenario, and then we all are going to play a role play part on how each team can come combinedly and give their part to the collective intelligence. So let's start with the exercise scenario. So imagine that it can be any level of organization, mid-level, huge organization, or even a small organization. Imagine that there is an attack. Now I'm going to walk you through the each timeline of this attack. Monday morning, 9 a.m. IT help desk receives multiple reports from multiple employees that they are not able to use their work resources, files, and documents and everything. Basically, they don't have access to their day-to-day job duty things. Simultaneously, Windows team also report that there are several domain controller servers who are experiencing some delays and login issues and access issues. So IT finds out that all these things, they did their troubleshooting, and after their troubleshooting, they found out that the files which employees are not able to access or all the documents, they all are encrypted. So they understand that this might be a security issue, and they immediately engage incident response security team after half an hour. So after 1 hour, keep in mind that this has happened. IT has engaged incident response team, and after 1 hour, customers of these company have started contacting IT support team and technical account managers that they are not able to access the web portal of the company, and they are not able to access any of their corporate data. So the web portal is coming with a big banner saying 404 file not or directory not found error. So IT finds out this from multiple customers, and they immediately engages two teams, software security team and application security team, for investigating why this is happening, because now this is impacting customers. Now 3 hours later or so, all the previous users who initially were not able to access their work resources, now their corporate devices are popping up a ransomware note. So they are seeing a note that, hey, all your files have been encrypted. You will have to pay the ransom money for us to release the access to all of you. And till then, everything is locked up. So now they all immediately goes back to IT, and IT immediately report this thing to security incident response team that this is the ransomware attack. After 1 hour, while IT was simultaneously working with software security and incident response team, they confirmed that their backup servers were not encrypted. So there are chances that attackers might also have got access / compromise their backup servers because they were not encrypted at all. And then additionally, like a cherry on top, they confirmed that their most recent replication, where they used to store the replicated data, the last time it happened was 1 month back. So there was a big lap of 1 month where they did not have any replicated data or backup data of the company. Now, this has got even risen higher. Around 5 p.m., companies' VP and CEO reach out to their executive assistant and security teams managers to ask what's going on, because recently one of the reporters have reached out to them that, hey, we have heard that your organization and all the customers related to your organizations have undergone a ransomware attack. So this has spread it to media and press now. So imagine the level of severity. VP and CEO, everyone is stressed out. And lastly, the advanced threat intelligence team of this organization, after 1 hour or so, around 6 p.m. in the evening, they find out that there is a posting from a very famous threat actor on a dark web saying that we are leaking confidential data of this organization soon. So they saw this big hint on a dark web. So the threat actors who have spread this ransomware on this company are about to sell their confidential data on a dark web.
Wow. Rutu, you kept a straight face through all of those different events, right? Sounds like you have quite a bit of experience with this, each of them happening in such quick sequence. How did teams begin to bring together all of this information, and how can they coordinate to defend against this type of a threat?
Well, that's where the collective intelligence comes into the picture, that it's not just on one team. This is going to be impacted on each and every team of this organization. They are collectively going to work on solving this attack. Speaking about, for example, to understand how this attack got entered into the organization, incident response and security engineers comes into the picture. They are like cyber detectives who are going to understand how this entered into our network. So one of the very first and very important step of this entire cycle is to create a threat profile / managing attack life cycle phases, starting from beginning throughout the phase, because this incident is not like going to be solved in one day, right? So it's going to be continuing for a few more days. I don't know how long. So incident response security engineers are going to create a threat profile, and that is using this threat profile and maintaining the current state of this impact analysis throughout the attack life cycle is very important for all the other teams to understand the severity of the attack. So incident response team, as soon as they get this issue, they are going to jump back on these impacted devices. For example, 50 machines are impacted or 50 people have got this ransomware node. Then they are immediately first going to network isolate those devices so that the impact or the malicious payload doesn't get spread out in the environment. And after that, they're going to jump back on each and every impacted system, and they're going to find out how this malicious ransomware payload or binary got onto those devices. And what is the level of impact? Is that impacted to just one region or 3 regions or in another country regions as well? And for that, they're going to perform log analysis, forensic analysis, actually breaking into the payload and performing reverse engineering into it and find out what all things have been compromised. What was the ingress vector for this? Whether it was a phishing email, whether it was a social engineering attack, whether it was some browser extension, how did that happen? So finding out who, why, and how these threat actor is targeting the organization is one of the very important part of this thing. And then they are going to, based on the activity, they are going to manage this entire attack lifecycle so all the other teams can take an idea of what's going on. So that's the very important first step of creating a threat landscape for all the other teams.
I see. Yeah, you can't leave your CEO on red. There has to be some kind of communication, right? Once you've contained the threat back to the rest of the organization. Thanks for walking us through that. Let's start with a quick role play. Comfort, would you be able to play out the role of the IT administrator, the help desk, and help us walk through this remediation scenario discussed by Rutu?
Yes, please. Awesome. There's fire on the mountain. So run. Run for cover. So taking the role of the IT administrator, what we would have to do is we would initiate the recovery of databases, investigate what permissions have been compromised, when was the last sync, which was like a month ago, and most importantly, would have to communicate and work with the incident response team, that's Rutu's team, to understand the threat life cycle and provide as much needed data they would need to resolve the incident. Now, as an IT help desk analyst playing that role, it's very important that we want to stop the virus from spreading. Again, remember, we have to stop the virus from spreading. And so what do we have to do? Based on the information provided by Rutu and the team, we would have to isolate the network devices. We'll rotate users' credentials. Would have to handle the mass handling of various platforms, to change the permission settings and provide replacement devices, because now employees can work with their devices. So we'll have to work backwards with that. And from the application security point of view, now just think about this. There is a risk here. There is data exposure and unauthorized exposure of sensitive data. Identity theft, those are risks that could lead or that could cause reputational damage and financial damage to the company. So we would have to work backwards by assessing our backend applications against the AppSec reports. We would have to detect what have been compromised. In this case, our backup servers. But we would have to know what sensitive information have been released. Okay? Now we would have to determine what was lost. That would help us in determining our next steps. We'll make a chart of the attack, very important, a flow diagram of the attack. Then, based on this, we'll work backwards by creating actionable steps, understanding the pattern of the attack, so that we can then use this information to engage with the security or the software security team in reinforcing security measures such as replication, encryption, conducting full updated backup of our data, okay, and introducing new security controls such as detective and preventive controls, because integrating automation in this use case would help to create a defensive depth against any upcoming attacks. Thank you.
Thank you, Comfort, for explaining in detail how the IT help desk and IT admins work to identify and then block this initial threat. Let's see how corporate incident response and threat intelligence teams then start to analyze the impact of the ransomware attack once it's been contained. Rutu, can you share again what the process might look like on this side?
Yeah, absolutely. Are you guys interested in knowing for this specific scenario, how did this ransomware entered into the system? Are you guys
Definitely.
excited?
Yeah, I know I am.
All right. So also keep this in mind that this is totally based on this scenario. Every use case has a different ingress vector and every use case have a different strategy. So for this specific scenario, the issues gets reported to corporate incident response team. Now, me being an incident response security engineer, I will start, or my team will start the analysis by finding out what was the initial ingress vector and scope for this ransomware payload or attack. So we will review our available logs associated with this various corporate host, email logs, service logs, and all the possible logging infrastructure. For example, in this case, after checking all these logs, we found out that the initial vector for this malicious payload was deployed via phishing email sent to an employee's corporate mailbox. So that employee was working for a customer support case team, CSC support case team. So they were working on their assigned support case, and then they saw an email from their customer, which they thought that a legitimate email, and they downloaded that phishing document. They double click on that document, that leads off execution of the ransomware payload. Now, them being benign, they downloaded it, they double clicked it, they thought that, why this is not working? So that customer support case engineer copied that document, pasted it on their entire global team's Slack room. Oh. So now all the customer support case people globally, they downloaded that document and boom, everyone got that document, everyone got executed that malicious payload without even knowing that what's going on, and that's how the ransomware got spreaded. So this entire payload was deployed via phishing email sent to the CSE employee, and then that's how all these things are. That's how we will find out how the ingress vector and scoping down the impact. Now, in order to understand lateral movement of, how this actor actually got access to so many company resources and what all things they have compromised, we will start analyzing that after downloading that malicious document or that malicious ransomware payload, how did they got access to company things? So we will reverse engineer it. We will perform our forensic investigation on it, and we found out that payload gives the access to entire exchange via Outlook to this threat actor. So now actor leverage that access to create a dump of exchange global address list and provide them, and they now get all the details of all company employees' email addresses and their job roles for majority of the company. So now they have access to all the company data. So they are going to craft and send spear phishing emails as a second stage of this ransomware payload to multiple other teams in engineering, in customer support, in HR, legal, software developers, everywhere. So then we will start pivoting on with various indicators of compromises that this payload reach out in the company's network. And we are going to start understanding the impact which it will have on internal as well as external services. Because as soon as they'll have access to these corporate devices, the first thing they are planning to do is to take out all the communication portals. So there will be no communication internal teams. And also they take out the server so the customers will not be able to access their portal. This is a huge impact. I try to cover it very recombinedly, but it has a detailed stages and very well documented stages and outputs. Now, we as in corporate security incident response team work very close, hands on hands, with a very important team in any security infrastructure, which is known as Advanced Threat Intelligence Team. So, Advanced Threat Intelligence teams works with a corporate security team to track down this external actor so that they can, provide additional details from a threat landscape so that we can create alerts and detections for future steps and future compromises. So I would let my very good friend Ruchira to cover how advanced threat intelligence team comes into picture and what role they play in this entire collective intelligence life cycle. So Ruchira, can you please provide an update on how a advanced threat intelligence team play their role, please?
Absolutely. So, from a perspective of a threat intelligence team, at this point, I would have found out that any endpoint detections and user reports provide enough data for the responders to identify the initial phishing emails. How did this all even begin? And analysis of ransomware payload should allow for scoping of all the initially impacted systems, plus analysis of the malicious payload by the incident response and threat intelligence team would confirm that the malware is spreading via, let's say, SMB, which is a communications protocol. For containment, the threat intelligence team will also engage infrastructure teams to push endpoint and network blocks for all SMB traffic. So basically, threat intelligence team will use any on all kinds of tracking resources to track down any possible external threat actors, and their responsibility is to automate this as much as they can. So automating incident response elements would improve efficiency, and by using the threat intelligence to structure rules and using risk indicators or the presence of connected infrastructure as decision points for executing any automated actions and pivots, organizations can really better support analyst teams by automating the investigation as much as possible. So that's the overall role of a threat intelligence team combined with the incident response team. Over to you, Avery.
Thanks, Ruchira. Uh, Once you have all of this information gathered, you know more about the adversary, some of their typical behaviors in organization's environment. A detail like the lack of encryption might not be something that's communicated out to external stakeholders or even to executives. Well, what type of effort does it take to coordinate a response at scale to this kind of a security incident? What type of teams are involved in translating this type of message?
Absolutely. And that's such an important question because when an incident occurs, it's not just the organization and the employees who are affected. The first thing that we have to think about is the customer and how does it impact their personal data. So, a couple of teams that are involved to communicate and give the customers live updates about the incident are public relations, customer support, marketing, and HR teams. And they communicate in a way that the customer receives live information, is assured that people are working to protect their data, and we do not want to create any kind of panic situations among the audience or the customers. So customer support team's responsibility is to make sure that any incoming tickets, phone calls about the incident get a timely and appropriate response, and they also pass any customer source details to the incident response team. PR and marketing teams would be responsible for writing and sending internal and external communications about the incident. They'd also be responsible to collect customer responses and interface with executives and other high level stakeholders, CEO, CTO, vice president, etc. The role of human resources on the incident response team would be to provide advice as to how best handle a situation involving employees, So HR will generally not be required to assist with an incident until after an investigation has begun. Uh, in the event that an employee is discovered to be involved with the incident, the HR can assist with disciplinary actions or employee counseling.
Okay. I'd imagine that getting a 404 hour or a ransomware note on your desktop could be pretty jarring. And depending on the distribution, the sensitivity of the data that was potentially compromised, this might trigger some kind of compliance or contractual obligations. Where does legal come in during this type of an engagement? Is it external, internal? What does that look like?
Yes, and I'll take that up. So, in addition to everything that we've talked about, to create a comprehensive IR plan, the legal team should be involved early on in the conversation to assist with organization drafts and the required policies, advise the management team on necessary legal actions, as well as perform assurance duties to ensure that an organization's legal standing is protected in case of a cyber attack. Also, legal definitions of terms might vary and may be interpreted differently by diverse target audiences. So, the legal teams need to work alongside PR, communications, and IR teams when communicating with such audiences, for example, customers and government agencies, to ensure that the information is accurately and timely conveyed and is in compliance. And when we talk about client facing obligations, technical account managers or customer account managers also need to work with customers whose services are impacted, for example, service utilization or data is exposed. That is where the TAM comes in to address customer concern and provide them details that have been pre approved or vetted by the legal and PR teams. To adhere to the company's messaging policies. And it's also important to convey the right information to customers as it helps maintain customers' trust and enable long lasting relationships with your customers. Also, as a CIA, I would like to add, like, as many of you may know, cloud platforms often have a shared responsibility model, which means that while services are provided, the data provided are secure, the customer still needs to ensure that they're configuring them in the correct and secure manner. So, as a software engineer, you may need to write secure and automated code. And your DevOps and cloud architecture teams need to design for highly available, scalable, redundant architectures and periodically have configuration checks and routine assessments in place to adhere to a good security posture, and should also ensure visibility and access rights into your resources to configure reporting and remediation plans. And incident response may not be a priority for these teams, yet they may have certain controls your incident responders may need in order to understand and access these things better. So it's really important to establish collaborative relationships to improve your security posture, not just within a team, but across cross functional teams to bring the right information to the right people.
That makes a lot of sense. Now that we know the contractual obligations, the type of communication that needs to happen between the different stakeholders that we've engaged and contain the incident, what are the risk management or security plan updates that need to be modified in the wake of an incident? How do we enforce these security practices?
Brilliant. So it's very simple. I have a question. Do you have an existing security plan? That's a question. Or have you developed one? So think about that. So it's very important to have a well-devised plan that covers your organization's cyber risk strategy. Cyber risk strategy, because with having this, it's going to help in the area of recovery should a security event such as this occur. And on the second use case is you'd want to conduct a comprehensive risk assessment. This should be a continuous practice, not a one-time stop, okay? Because this will help in understanding what threats and vulnerabilities are concerned to your business. Based on this, you can develop custom solutions and involving our policies where needed. Again, you want to implement continuous monitoring and awareness by ensuring that your systems are up to date. encryption, encrypt your data, secure your password, integrate automation. Okay, back up your data. Okay, have that system in place. I repeat, back up your sensitive data. And again, you want to establish and maintain security controls. You want to implement autonomous security controls, that could help to prevent and detect when a security vulnerability or threat is happening. This could include firewalls, anti-malware applications, intrusion detections, prevention solutions. There are a lot there. So it depends on your use case. You want to devise a custom solution for yourself. And last but not the least, you want to check and revise security policies and procedures. Employ pen tests. I repeat, employ a pen test is a good investment. Okay, and develop employee security awareness. Do this training, is very important. Someone mentioned that during the session about conducting security trainings for your employees. You want to do that, and don't forget to encrypt. Thank you.
Thank you, Comfort, for laying all those out. It sounds like a lot of these things that the organization probably wishes they'd done right ahead of an incident. But just because you've contained and you've had an incident doesn't mean you can't go back and do a post-mortem, understand what went wrong, look at the attack chain, look at the incident and how it played out to make sure that you are robust and you have those controls put up in for the future and the continuation of your business. Keeping all of these different things in mind, what are some of the things that organizations, regardless of their size or their industry, can begin to implement today? How can they take advantage of what we've learned here?
So, in order to build a good strategy for collective intelligence, outreach is key. So, while you're collecting and assessing ideas, a business should reach across hierarchical or functional barriers inside the organization and should also try to obtain help from outside, meaning collecting information from a myriad of sources and aggregating the data from a broader set of people. And it's really important that you bring together diverse demographics, genders, and age groups because it helps create cognitive diversity, makes room for a growth mindset, cross pollination of ideas, as well as for faster innovation. And this in turn also translates to self organization mechanisms that enables interactions among group members, and they should be laid down in a way that encourages collaborative mentality rather than the notion of it's my idea. So a good CI strategy will enable people to create value by adding to or deleting from people's contributions without hurting their emotions. And it would also be a great practice to periodically review the effectiveness of your collective intelligence strategies, taking feedbacks into accounts from your team members and making adjustments accordingly as you go.
Thanks, Amisha. The constant feedback loop is something that is so important, right? Continuing to raise the bar, continuing to revisit what you've put out so far and improve upon that. With the review of these proactive solutions, the example by Rutu, the walkthrough and the insight shared by Amisha, Comfort, and Ruchira, these types of solutions can be applied across all types of organizations, and they can clearly make a huge impact. Ruchira, can you bring it back and just summarize some of what we've walked through and how to apply this?
Absolutely. First and foremost, I was really, when Comfort said back up your data, I was reminded of the one time I actually did not back up my data, and that was a pain. Also, encrypt your data because, like Comfort said, encrypt. If you don't, the threat actors will encrypt it for you. So that's one major takeaway from this. But jokes apart, in order to defend against the fast evolving cyber attacks, organizations really need to recognize the value of collective intelligence in the domain. Because by sharing cyber intelligence with each other and in near real time, organizations can really optimize security response and provide better visibility into the threat landscape. This will really help organizations to shift from a reactive security posture to a proactive one. And in this panel, we just considered one example of how collective intelligence help in the cybersecurity domain. We chose incident response because that better displays how everybody works together to remediate an attack. But it's very important to know that you have to apply collective intelligence in all of the processes across your organizations, not just within one team, but between several teams too. And that will really help you protect your data better and create a defense in depth strategy.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you everyone for joining us today. In the interest of time, we won't be able to take any further questions from the audience. However, we will be at the booth for the remainder of the day. Please find us here and continue the exciting conversation. Also, feel free to connect with us via the LinkedIn handles that we've shown throughout the session, and then the links in our bios as well. Thank you again to our panelists, and thank you to the audience for joining us. Delightful discussion today. Have a great day.
Bye, guys. Thank you.